And I hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday. Good evening. Back with you, Meteorologist Todd Howell in the WBIR Streaming Center. We are going to continue to bring you continuous updates on this upcoming winter storm system that does appear to be bringing us likely significant wintry weather starting late Friday night, but especially Saturday through Sunday. And some of those impacts are expected to linger into early next week as cold air sticks around. So what we want to talk about with our weather headlines, and again, we'll get right to it. Headline number one, this is what we know. Wintry weather appears likely. We're talking about predominantly snow, some sleet, maybe some icing, question mark. There may be enough warm air coming into the southern parts of East Tennessee, maybe the southern half of East Tennessee, but most of this is expected to be generally south of Interstate 40, where there could be some icing from freezing rain. But most of us looks like we're going to see predominantly snow. Some sleet is expected to mix in at times during the middle part of the event, and then maybe some icing for a brief period of time, but then going back to all snow before precipitation winds down late Sunday night, possibly even into early Monday morning. So that's the general setup. So what we know is wintry weather is likely. Now, headline number two, as with any winter storm system, there's always going to be some level of uncertainty, okay? Because a lot of times when you're far out, we're still 4 days out, so the exact details are certainly not quite there yet in terms of the exact amounts, knowing the exact amounts, but a lot of that has to do with the varying precipitation types. And here's why. For example, if we're expecting a lot of snow, but we get decent amounts of sleet mixing in, that can cut into your snowfall totals. Sleet is factored into snowfall totals, but obviously that can give you less snowfall if you get a lot of sleet. If we get a little bit more icy mixing in, that also can cut down on the total. So modeling, and we'll talk much more about this coming up again, we're going to walk through all the details for you, and we'll continue to bring you updates throughout the week. But modeling has literally been going south to north with the heaviest snow band. All models agree right here, again, that wintry weather is likely, and they also agree that it looks to be significant with hazardous travel conditions likely, whether it's all snow, snow and sleet, or snow, sleet, and freezing rain, or some combination thereof. But the key point right now in our main messaging as of today, Tuesday night, again, just under 4 days away from most of the events starting late Friday night, but mainly Saturday through Sunday night, the main messaging is impacts appear likely with wintry weather expected throughout most of this weekend. And it looks to be a notable storm. By that, significant amounts are being projected. So here's where we are. So some uncertainty with the exact amounts. However, we're going to be fine-tuning, and certainly as we get closer to the event, that's going to be taking place over the next couple of days. Matter of fact, starting tomorrow, we will be issuing our first snowfall amounts and also a better idea of the timing and impacts, etc. But that's kind of where we are. I'll talk more about that the next graphic. Yes, we've not even put out an official snowfall forecast yet. So if you've seen anything, not from Channel 10 yet, you've seen a lot on social media, be wary of what you see on social media. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of misinformation. And so, again, one of the reasons we use discernment and try to use discretion instead of just throwing out amounts early on and having to pull that back is for that very reason. Models change. The numbers change. When you get closer to the event, there's more clarity that comes with that. So that's our protocol. I'll talk more about that next graphic. Finally, so here's where we are right now. Wintry weather likely, impacts appear likely. Still, we're going to fine-tune the amounts in the coming days, and that will happen soon. But what do you need to do? You need to start preparing and get prepared now for the upcoming wintry weather and hazardous travel conditions. So what can you do? Well, you can plan on not having to travel this weekend if you don't have to. It's that type of winter storm system. And let me go ahead and say, you'll see this in a moment when I show you our regional futurecast in just a few seconds, but this is not just a Tennessee or East Tennessee storm. This is a regional. Matter of fact, it's almost the eastern half of the country. This is a very strong, notable, impactful winter storm system. It's going to be impacting multiple states and areas. So we're not just talking about us, and I'm giving you our local forecast, but we're talking about regional travel conditions that are expected to be hazardous this weekend for all around Tennessee. Again, north, south, east, west, etc. And regardless of amounts, here's the key, the impacts look to be high and significant. So we're going to talk about those details going forward. All right, so let's look ahead. Now, in the near term, the next 3 days, and specifically the next 2 days, notice what we're seeing as we take it full here. Our Wednesday and Thursday, we're near 50 degrees tomorrow. Now, we do have a chance and expecting actually some scattered, mainly light rain showers, late Wednesday afternoon on into our Wednesday evening. So late tomorrow, we got some scattered light rain. Notice our temperature, again, it's going to be getting just above 50 degrees as we go during the day. Look at our low tonight, though, 19. By the way, tonight, clear and very cold once again in the upper teens. That's going to help to get that ground cold and in place prior to the weekend system. Even though we get up near 50 degrees next couple of days, basically that's not going to matter because the cold Arctic air is going to be moving in. Tomorrow night, we're above freezing and near 50 on Thursday, so relatively mild and dry, partly cloudy skies. Here's where we start to see the first round and the first issuance of our winter weather impact alert, and that's going to be in place for Friday night through Sunday. You'll see more of that coming up in just a moment. But a weather impact alert starts Friday night. Some light wintry precip is possible. We mainly are issuing that just to simply bring awareness for Friday night, even though most of it's going to be Saturday night, and all day Sunday into Sunday night. We just want to start Friday night because you need to have your supplies and you need to be where you need to be and basically settling in by Friday night. Matter of fact, here's another point. Notice we're 41 on Friday. We're going to get this Arctic cold front's moving through Friday night. Once we fall below freezing later Friday night, we're expected to stay below freezing from Friday night, basically through Tuesday. It's going to take until Tuesday afternoon when we have a high of 37 until we get back above freezing. So starting later Friday night through Tuesday early afternoon, we're going to be below freezing. So that means while we're expecting hazardous wintry weather, the temperatures also are going to be below freezing, and that's why it's going to be hazardous, because the very cold air is going to be sticking around. And you'll see this on the 7-day. Whatever falls has a good chance, pun intended, of sticking around into early next week because the colder air will be filtering in behind the system. We're talking about lows at night in the teens and highs in the 30s. So that's what we're looking at. The impacts from the system will likely be lingering even into early next week. All right, so that's the broad setup from our weather headlines for this weekend's wintry weather to the next 3 days and the start of the weather impact alert coming up Friday night. So let's talk about our winter weather timeline. We were talking about this last night in our initial stream, and again, just to give you a broad brush overview, this is our protocol. So when we're more than a week out, we talk about, okay, there's a chance, it's a maybe if, models are projecting a storm, but we don't get too specific. And why? Because, as we just talked about, models inevitably are going to fluctuate back and forth. It's almost always going to happen with any winter storm event. So we're not going to just throw out some rogue range amounts like you'll see on social media. We're not going to do that because, number one, it's irresponsible. And number two, it's just a lot of times incorrect, because models are going to change. And instead of having you go back and forth and yo-yoing with your emotions, so to speak, we want to be sure that when we put out a forecast, we take into account all the data, and as we get closer, we feel like it's more responsible to do that as you get closer to event. Also, there's more clarity and precision with forecast details when you move closer to any winter storm event. So there's a lot of reasons to not just throw some event. Anyway, that's kind of for social media concerns there. Again, be careful what you see. You're going to see all kind of totals out there. All right, so anyway, here's where we are today. Let's just stick to the details, right? Timing and impacts, we're 2 to 4 days out. We're just under 4 days out. It mainly starts early Saturday. Okay, so here we are Tuesday. We got time to plan and get prepared, and that's where we are. We're in the planning stage, but we are talking about the timing and the impacts. And so going forward now, and we're even going to speed this up. Normally we do 1 to 2 days out for most winter events. We talk about snow totals, and we're fine-tuning. Of course, we'll always be fine-tuning going forward, but that's usually when we do that. We're going to speed that up by a day or so because this is a particularly notable winter storm event. Again, what some of the amounts and the possibilities ranging from snow, sleet, maybe some ice, again, wide-reaching, wide-impacting storm. What some of the models are showing is looks very significant. So we're going to start tomorrow for Wednesday, putting out our snow totals. And obviously with each day, those may be tweaked from day to day. Just because the numbers put out initially, it may not stay that way because we fine tune it. Again, so don't get mad if you see those numbers go up or down or whatever. Maybe you like to see them go up if you're snow lovers. Of course you do, right? But anyway, we'll try to continue to tweak that. But again, that's part of our timing, okay? So we don't have to, we're trying to be consistent. So here's what we're looking at going forward. Again, we're talking about the different winter precipitation types, and I'll go ahead and take it full, but we're talking about snow, sleet, freezing rain, and rain. So let's talk about these just briefly. As you know, of course, when you have snow, that's when the column of air is sufficiently cold enough. So by the way, look at all this, even from snow to rain, notice it starting out as snow in all four of these precip type cases. Wait a minute, you mean even when it's in the 50s or 60s and it rains in the wintertime, it starts out as snow? Yes. Obviously, let's just talk about rain. Rain is obviously when it, sufficiently warm through the layers, and then you have rain all the way down the surface, okay? But it starts as snow. So if you didn't know, that's how the atmosphere works, especially in the cool season. Now let's talk about freezing rain. Freezing rain is just like rain with one notable exception. It's rain all the way to the ground, okay? Freezing rain is rain all the way to the ground, but here's the key in this blue part right here. If the ground temperature is at or below freezing, that rain freezes on contact with the ground, and that's what creates a glaze. That's the worst. Freezing rain is the ice. You don't want that. About the only thing good that ice or freezing rain is good for is a beautiful postcard scene, but we don't want that, okay? But unfortunately, our neighbors to our south, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, even parts of Louisiana, and I'm just naming some close to us. Again, this is going to be from Texas all the way to the East Coast. As far as the ice goes, major ice storm for our neighbors to our south, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. Some of that icing could move up into southeast Tennessee as a warm nose moves in late Saturday and early Sunday. That's possible, but models have been fluctuating, and we've got some information I'll share as far as what we're seeing with the latest on that. And so I'll talk more about that, but again, it's not always just all snow and here we go and that's it. Although the last 2 Januaries, you know what, even in Knoxville, we saw all snow. Had 9.5 inches at my house last January. That was a beautiful snow. No wind from morning to late afternoon and evening. It was all snow. It was one of the prettiest snows I've ever seen. Meanwhile, again, but seldom do you see a pure all snow event. A lot of times you're going to have some sleet mixed in. All right, let's talk about this. What is sleet? Sleet has a beat. That's what you meant. It's a frozen raindrop that bounces off the ground. You can hear it, especially on some type of tin roof or it hitting the leaves and the ground, and it's not rain, it's ice pellets. So sleet is a frozen raindrop. And now here's what's kind of cool as far as how the atmosphere, how it works. Again, it starts as snow, but then you have a little bit of a warm layer in the atmosphere. So that snowflake melts to a raindrop, but then the depth of cold air before it hits the ground is deep. So notice over here, freezing rain, it's not deep at all, it's just on the ground, see? But over here, when you have sleet, you have a lot of cold air, so that raindrop refreezes and then bounces off the ground. I'm trying to do my arrow like it. Okay, that sleet has a beat. And then, of course, snow falls from a cloud of snow, stays to the ground of snow, and that's what kids and school teachers and everybody loves to see. Okay, all right, so that's what we're talking about for your precip type. So the reason I'm showing that is because all of those are in play. Well, 2 or 3 of those could be in play for us. We're not going to see liquid, for the most part. We've got, it's all going to be frozen. All right, so here's what we're seeing. Notice the timeline here. This is Saturday morning, maybe as early as late Friday night. This is one of our reliable medium range models. We have 2 different medium range models we use regularly, and we have 2 different high-res models that we use regularly. Now, quick point on that. Right now, we're in the medium range as far as resolution. Okay, now we don't have to go into all the specific details with that, but just think about the name. So they're showing it, and they do a good job with what they do. This is one of our 2 medium-range models. The other one, by the way, is a little bit faster, brings in light wintry precip late Friday night, so it could be in here Saturday morning, a little bit quicker. I'll come back to that in a moment. The high-res models, by nature of the name, are higher resolution, and so are going to show more detail. When do we start seeing those, Todd? Well, we'll start seeing those as early as 3 days out into, it's basically 48 to 72 hours out. That's when we see our high-res models getting in on the modeling, but not until then. So you don't get your high-res data until you're 2 to 3 days out, 48 to 72 hours out, respectively. So that's the nature of modeling. So again, that's why, by the way, if you see something a week out, that's a medium range model, it's probably going to change, okay? So don't take that, as, as solid and concrete, that it's going to stay the same. It's probably going to change. All right, so let's get back to our timeline. Here's a look at Saturday morning. This is this one particular model, and again, it's showing the wintry weather. By the way, the blue shades are all snow. So with this particular model, especially early on, starts out as all snow, okay? Notice the pink, that is a mix of snow, sleet, maybe snow, sleet, and some freezing rain. So for northern parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, that will probably be snow and sleet mix initially, but further down into, including Louisiana, Arkansas, southern Arkansas, but a good portion of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, that pink is going to represent freezing rain. Remember our precip type? Ice. And unfortunately, folks, it looks like a significant ice storm for our neighbors to our south. That's not good news. And that's the worst. When I say significant, it could have an inch of ice or more with ice accretion on the tree limbs and power lines. So that's an ice storm. When you hear ice storm, then automatically you have tree limbs down and power outages. And so, that's the unfortunate, the likelihood scenario that there's going to be significant icing and that strong possibility of power outages and down trees and power lines, especially for our neighbors to our south. Now, that's why we don't want icing. That's why you'd much rather, if I asked everybody a question, would you rather have snow or ice? You're probably going to say snow, right? I'm sure most people would. But the other factor, it's pretty to look at and you can play in it, etc. But the other factor is, if you don't get the ice, you have much less chances to see more of those widespread power outages. Now, as I move forward, this is Saturday night. So notice what we got going here. Mostly snow from Nashville to Crossville to Knoxville, okay? And where you see the darker shades, that's heavier rates of precipitation, in this case snow, okay? Notice we do have a little bit of pink mixing in the Southern Valley. That's probably some sleet mixing in. So that's why I think we're predominantly, seeing snow with some sleet mixing in later Saturday evening, Saturday night. And the green is rain, and again, that would be freezing rain. Cold Arctic air is making its way south. And Arctic air tends to overperform instead of underperform. What do I mean by that? Well, it's at least that, if not more, in terms of the threat for frozen precipitation. Arctic air is different. There's a favorable setup. You got a cold Arctic high to the north. You got a low pressure to our south. Gulf moisture overriding that cold, dense, heavier weighted Arctic air that wants to hug the ground surface, and it does not want to get eroded out quickly at all. So Arctic air is heavier, more dense, it's colder, it's hard to dislodge. And so basically the saying is high pressure over low, high over low, conditions are favorable for snow. So that's a common meteorological phrase, and it's very true, especially when you got an Arctic high. So the setup is there. Cold air, cold ground will be in place, moisture from the Gulf overrunning that cold Arctic air at the surface, and the lifting mechanism, that low pressure and the lift in the atmosphere, voila, no wonder we have wintry weather. So this is Saturday night, and again, all across I-40 corridor, coming out of Arkansas, Tennessee, up to Kentucky, to our east, into the Carolinas, south. Again, remember the widespread impacts for not just Tennessee, but all over. Travel not recommended this weekend because of the significant snow and ice threat for many areas. All right, so let's, of course, move forward. There's a lot of details to get to, so I'm trying to get to as much as I can. I've got some pause points in here. All right, I stop it. This is late Saturday night, Sunday morning. So notice, and again, this is a medium range, not the high detail, but what the spirit of what this model is showing is close to Knoxville, we are getting more of a mix by late Saturday night, Sunday morning. We've already been experiencing some moderate to heavy snow and accumulations likely. Now we're going to see some sleet mixing in with the snow, and especially for the southern half of East Tennessee. Generally from Interstate 40 south has the greatest chance to see more of that mix and a little bit less of the snow equation for this time frame, not for the whole event, just now, from late Saturday night through Sunday morning. Then we're going to add a little bit of a warm nose. Now, we look at a lot of modeling multiple times a day, so I won't get into all the nitty-gritty details of this model, this time, so this. Let me just say what I'm seeing as far as the trend. This particular model, at one point earlier, had a strong warm nose all the way up near the Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia line. Since then, it's come back south a little bit. And so what does that mean? Well, wherever the warm, we call it a warm nose, it's just like it's just nosing its way up into the valley. And we see that sometimes in the East Tennessee Valley. And you know, sometimes in the way past, not with this event, but in the way past, it's like, ooh, that warm nose was strong and it brought us more rain than snow in the valley. We know about those events. That does not apply, thankfully, with this one as far as the forecast goes. Anyway, but what it is going to do is bring in a little bit more warm air and give us a chance to mix, especially the southern half of the region. But here's the key. Wherever that warm nose stops, just north of it, dumping heavy snow. So if you're watching, especially, and in this case, I'll just go ahead and take it, right where it's showing. The northern third, northern counties in East Tennessee, you may stay all snow with little, maybe some sleet mixed in, but not nearly as much of a mix. And Kentucky and Virginia, all snow. And so you potentially could see some heavier amounts. Now, we'll say this, though. The further north you go, in general, though, overall, it's not expected to be, the amounts aren't expected to be as high. So the sweet spot for heaviest snow could in fact be across the northern half of East Tennessee from I-40 northward, depending on exactly where that warm nose sets up. So again, didn't want to spend too much time on that, but just looking at all the data, if this warm nose gets a little bit further south, the heavier snow is also a little bit for more of East Tennessee. So, and here's the thing, it looks heavy even before it even changes over. So significant snow and then some sleet and potential icing in southern areas is likely. So this is why we're saying regardless of the overall total amounts, and amounts are important, no doubt. We all want to know the amounts and how much could this storm produce, and we're going to be talking about that very soon. But regardless of, I'll just throw out a number. Let's just say regardless whether you get 8 inches or 12 inches, for example. I'm just throwing those out randomly. Regardless between two, not a whole lot of difference between that. I mean, I know there is, a foot versus 8 inches, but both are impactful. That's just giving you an example. That's not what we're going with. That's not our forecast. Just giving you an example. The point I'm trying to make is the impacts are going to be the same either way. Whether you have a whole bunch of snow, and models are showing, yeah, very significant amounts potentially. But whether you have, little or a lot, the impacts are going to be the same either way, pretty much. And then it's just a matter of how deep, right? Okay, so that's the setup. Now let's go forward. This is Sunday morning, and so again, I did want to explain that about the warm nose because you see, I know that went through kind of, and by the way, this is the medium range models we talked about, so it's not going to give you quite the clarity. Let me see, let me stop it. There's on, so that's back to noontime. But what I wanted to show you, you see the heavy snow, see where it's setting up? Interstate 40 north. See how close it is? So with that warm nose, it all depends on how far north that warm nose gets as far as the heavier snow and maybe staying more snow. If you stay more snow, your amounts could be very high. So that's why that's important. That's why I've spent a little time talking about that warm nose. But either way, again, the impacts are expected to be significant. So as we go Sunday noontime, let me just kind of go through this manually. There's, 2 p.m.? You can see it's kind of dipping a little bit more, but there's the spirit of what you're seeing. Now, I know it's showing some rain. It may get briefly above freezing. I think we'd call that NFL, not for long. We got cold air that's going to be wrapping around the system, so it may be, this is a good model. It's one of our more reliable models. It could be a little strong with the warm nose, but again, just one other point to make on this. If you're a snow lover, you want warm air to try to come up, but then stay and stop and stay just to your south. Because where it stops, north of that, that's where you get heavy snow. So icing is going to continue for the Carolinas. Again, can't stress that strong enough. This is going to be I don't want to use major too loosely, but as far as around all areas, not just Tennessee, and what I'm talking about is it is a major winter storm that's going to impact a lot of areas, okay, as far as travel, et cetera. All right, finishing out this particular model, there's a look at, once we go later Sunday afternoon, notice what happens to that. It's got some light rain in southeast Tennessee. It's got that mix, again, kind of I-40, which a lot of times happens. It's just the way it works. With the interstate, the I-40 a lot of times is dividing line. Let me just let that play on through, and that's as far out as this model goes. So, and again, it stops there. That's as far out as it goes. That's 7 p.m., but notice what we're seeing. We're seeing that that warm nose start to get eroded, and here's exactly what's going on. We've got a strong, deep low pressure that's becoming the dominant low as we go from Saturday night into Sunday. The other low pressure that was pushing that warm air up, it's starting to weaken. It's handing off. Here you go. I guess let me try to do this on this side, right? It's basically handing off. This low pressure is going to hand off to this low pressure out Atlantic. So you take it away. This low pressure in the Atlantic is going to become dominant, and that's going to really crank up. It looks like now they're going to add wind to the moderate to heavy snow along the mid-Atlantic. And if you add wind to heavy snow, you get blowing snow, you get blizzard conditions for the mid-Atlantic. Not here, we're not talking about blizzard, but again, we're talking about heavy snow. But they're going to add in potentially blizzard conditions for parts of even maybe coastal areas, but especially you get up around the Delmarva, D.C., Maryland, Delaware, and again into inland Virginia. And boy, Shenandoah Valley, Greenbrier Valley, on up into, especially closer to the coast, but D.C., Maryland, they've got some potential very heavy snow. So this storm, once it cranks, why is that important for us? We will add some wind to the equation, but the low pressure is counterclockwise. And so that's going to be pulling that more cold air southward. That's why we see the warm nose erode, and we see the cold air moving back in. That's why it changes back to snow on the back side of the system. So we're talking about literally, and that's why we mentioned the precip types, and back to our second headline, that's why it's still kind of premature to give specific exact amounts, because precip type is still in flux with modeling. It's pretty clear. Most of the modeling is showing, most of the same thing, but there's still been enough variance, and we're still 4 days out. That's why we use discernment, discretion to hold off on totals too soon, because we don't want to show you one thing and then go back the next day. Oh, sorry, that was not right. This one's right. And then the next day, no, never mind. We don't want to do that. We don't like to hype or yo-yo, but we just want to get it right and give you the best forecast we can. So that's the nature of what we're talking about with the modeling, okay, and going back and forth. So again, that's the variance. So we could go from snow and sleet to maybe some sleet and some icing possible, especially southern half of the region, then back to snow as it wraps up. So all that says is that is a wintry mess of a system, a winter storm that looks significant with significant accumulations across many areas, hazardous driving conditions. Again, travel not recommended this weekend anywhere in the region. I mean, it's not just going south, an ice storm. Places like Birmingham and Atlanta and north central Alabama, north central Georgia, north central Mississippi, it's not looking very good in terms of the ice storm threat. So this does look to be a significant system with a lot of the main players coming into play and helping to produce that. So that's what we're looking at right now. Again, totals and fine tuning are going to be basically starting tomorrow and then going forward. And we'll certainly keep you updated. Just a few particulars as far as where we're at right now. Let's see, we are 8:20 on this Tuesday night. It's 31 degrees. By the way, tonight looks clear and cold. As we see these are current temps. You're already down to 25 in Williamsburg. Upper teens tonight and early in the morning. So bundle up out the door for your Wednesday. Now highs tomorrow get briefly warmer near 50 degrees. And the other thing I do want to share with you, we actually have a weak system coming in tomorrow night and into early Thursday. It's a weak system. And again, not to gloss over it too quickly, but again, relative to what we're going to see this weekend, That's why we haven't been spending too much time on this. But we actually got a chance for scattered rain showers. Again, we're up near 50 tomorrow. It's going to be a breezy, milder afternoon. Late afternoon and evening. Just wanted to show you this next system. This is tomorrow night. This is some scattered rain showers. May have some snow showers mixed in the mountains. Again, minor accumulation possible there. Not looking at a whole lot of rain. Maybe a couple of tenths of an inch, maybe a quarter of an inch or so. Or maybe less than that. But anyway, some scattered showers for part of our Wednesday night. That moves out as we get into our Thursday. And then from Thursday into most of Friday looks dry and cooling. So the good news, I mean, as far as this goes, we've got Wednesday, Thursday, and most of Friday to get ready, to get prepared before the bulk of that wintry weather moves in, which could be as early as late Friday night, but particularly starting early Saturday morning and running throughout the weekend. So I'll wrap that up with the 7-day coming up in just a moment. So back to regional conditions. I want to show you, look how dry the air is. Dew point, 5 degrees, 0 in Charleston. All right, so let me back this up just a second. The other impact of that cold Arctic air that's going to be building in, this is Tuesday, already we're seeing the influence of the dry Arctic air with low dew points. If you have low dew points, you got very dry air, and actually that's a favorable setup in advance of any moisture moving in. So there are multiple flags being waved in the atmosphere, so to speak. That's one of them. There's a lot. And a lot of them are checking the box, honestly, for favorable conditions for snow. And again, the amounts and the impacts that models are showing is significant. It's very notable. And so we'll share more of this as we go in time. Certainly. All right, there's a look at our Wednesday evening. This is just a regional view. Just wanted to show you, it's a band of scattered showers, a few snowflakes. Again, minor system, no major impacts. And this, as far as this model goes out, just wanted to show you that through Friday, again, it looks to be mainly dry. There could be a little bit of a sneaky light mix later Friday afternoon, evening, but it's mainly late Friday night into Saturday where that wintry weather develops. So here's our wrap up, our summary. Clear and cold tonight, 19 tonight, near 50 tomorrow. A breezy day tomorrow. Winds southwest 10 to 15, maybe 20 miles per hour. Some of that light rain late into tomorrow evening. And so here's your 7-day. So here's, again, to wrap up and summarize, wintry weather, a winter storm system likely from late Friday night through Sunday night and lingering effects into early next week, because look at the temperatures. Once we drop below freezing, I mentioned this earlier, Friday night, we don't get above freezing again until Tuesday afternoon. So these are the numbers. We're 30 on Saturday, 31. A few areas in the Southern Valley may get just above freezing briefly, but if it plays out as expected, it may struggle to get above freezing. So that's why we got 31, and we start out Sunday morning 21. So we're very cold. Sunday night, Monday morning, skies clearing. Pick a number. I say that. Here's what we're looking at. We got 13. If you get a lot of snow on the ground and you got snowpack, it's typically going to be colder than even what models can see, because there's no snow on the ground right now. So this is what the model forecast, not really taking that into account. So we may have to shave at least 5 degrees off that, for example. I mean, we could easily be talking about single digits for lows if we get the amount expected and we get the cold Arctic air in the wake of that moving in. So all that just to say, whatever falls from this winter storm this weekend is likely going to be sticking around, literally, as we go Monday into Tuesday, with highs Monday 31. That could easily be in the upper 20s. If we see that cold Arctic high just kind of settling on in. If you get a lot of snowpack, the sun, what does it do when it hits the snow? Snow reflects it. It's got what we call a higher albedo reflection rate, so it doesn't heat the air very good at all when you have snowpack. So we'll see. Monday looks very cold. Monday night, again, pick a number night, 14 will go, could be colder, and then getting above freezing Tuesday. So that's what it looks like right now. Again, we'll keep you updated throughout the rest of this week. We'll continue with these live stream updates and plan on basically, we're pretty much going to be in 24/7 coverage as we go from Friday night through the weekend. And we'll get rested between. We'll be having shift work, and I hope you can do the same. And that's the other thing I'll point out. We got some time, so get preparations, do that. And otherwise, go about your normal routine. Otherwise, I mean, try to enjoy these next few days. Don't worry about the system coming in. You know, we got some time. You do need to prepare for it, and you do need to plan for it. And that's why we're doing these right now. That's why we're kind of like the atmosphere is showing us with modeling, we're trying to, convey that to you, and our messaging is, lots of flags being waved that wintry weather is likely. It looks to be significant, fairly likely, and we'll start honing in on that detailed forecast coming up. So that'll do it for now. Again, we'll be back, of course, later this evening on Fox 43 at 10 o'clock and on Channel 10, WBIR at 11 o'clock. And again, daily, you can expect to see these streams in increasing coverage, certainly, especially as we get closer to the event. Thank you for joining us. I hope you have a good, safe night.